and welcome to our first installment of Bluebird Broadcast spin-off series, Tell Me About It. I'm your creator, producer, editor, and host of the show, Milena Karpukhina. In short, we're getting together with writers, creators, and wildly talented people to engage in conversation about their process in person. So make sure to tune in to Tell Me About It between Bluebird Broadcast audio theater episodes, and write in with any recommendations on questions you'd like answered or even people you'd love to hear from by emailing us on info@bluebirdtheater.org. To kick us off, we're here with our very own Gracie Rittenberg, whose play A Little Less Than Kind we're in the process of raising funds to stage this year. Directed by Jessica Wu, this is a comeback to live theater you're not going to want to miss, so for more information on that, visit our website and donate via the field. Gracie is a Bluebird Theater Company ensemble member and current literary manager. She's a born and raised Brooklynite, graduated college from Reed in Portland, and completed Atlantic Theater Company's full-time conservatory in New York. She and I, among many other wonderful people, founded Bluebird Theater Company in 2019, and, well, I guess the rest is history. She's a writer, director, actor, and astonishing playwright. And without further ado, let's welcome her to the show, Gracie Rittenberg. Hi, Gracie.
Hi, Milena.
Hey. So how about before we, get into digging into the bulk of our talk, why don't you give us a little autobiographical spiel to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Okay, yeah. You gave such a great autobiography, but yes, I was born and raised in Park Slope, Brooklyn, where I went to the Berkeley Carroll School for most of my life, and in my senior year of high school, I took a playwriting class just as an English elective, and my parents had been taking me to theater a lot growing up, and I tried to act in some things, but my theater teacher didn't like me.
Classic.
She was like, it was kind of a weird thing where like she really had favorites, and she literally cast the same three people as the lead in every show. Like, she didn't even hide it. It was kind of funny. But anyway, so all that aside, when I first wrote a scene, I was like, oh, I love this. Like, it felt so easy in a weird way, because, the whole, all the wisdom about writing is that it's torture. But this all comes from novelists. So the playwriting, not that playwriting is easy, but it just felt like that's always how my thoughts wanted to arrange themselves. So then I went to Reed College, and I majored in theater, and it was like a very small theater department where we were able to just kind of do whatever we wanted a lot of the time. And it was really fun. And I was acting, and then for my thesis, I directed a production of The Lesson by Eugenie Ionesco, which was so much fun. And then after college, I was living in Portland, doing some classes with a Portland Experimental Theater Company, Pete, which is still a great company, and they still produce a lot. And I was just kind of unsure of what I really wanted to do, and then I decided, okay, I've had some fun in Portland, but it's time to go back to New York and do real acting school and get some real training. So I went to Atlantic, where I met you and a lot of other people, and I think and I wasn't writing that much while I was in Portland, but I was doing devised theater a little bit, which is where you write the play on your feet, kind of, and use physical theater to bring it to light. Yeah, it was fun. And then when I went to Atlantic, I think because Atlantic is so grounded in text work and really True. Digging through a play and picking it apart, I really felt like while I was at Atlantic, I learned a lot about playwriting. I do think, at Atlantic there was, they would just be we'd be working so hard, when we were doing Your Through Line and Antigone, and you basically rewrote the whole play and Frankensteined it together, and then they're like, okay, well, when you graduate, the only way that you're gonna act is if you write a play yourself. And I feel like we were all sitting there are you kidding? We've been working so hard. You want us to write a play too?
And then you did it. It's true that at Atlantic, we did spend so much of our time being not only just, actors in training, but also, directors and dramaturgs and producers and all of the rest. And so I think we sort of just took that and ran with it into Bluebird.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then when we started Bluebird, like, even though we're sort of all over the world right now, like, because obviously the story of Bluebird is we graduated December 2019, put up a show, and then immediately had to cancel it because of the pandemic.
Yeah, we had a opening night and closing night.
Yeah, at least we did have the opening night party, but...
True.
So that was not, it was not at all a blessing. I will never say that about the pandemic, but it definitely, a lot of us had to, like, just sit in our rooms and wonder what to do all day, and... So I turned to, well, everything's online. I might as well take a playwriting class. And I'm not exactly a self-motivated writer. Like, I won't just write for writing's sake. I'll do it if someone tells me to do it. Like, but, which is why, like, you know, that's why, like, I follow some playwrights on Twitter, and they're just like, you know, they're always like, if you see me on Twitter, yell at me because I'm on a deadline. And then 2 minutes later, they're like, isn't it so weird that birds are so loud at 5 a.m.? And it's like, okay.
Right.
So I think, like, especially with playwriting, like, there's a lot of, like, you know, commissions and, you know, you're asked to write plays for, like, these specific actors or this specific purpose or blah, blah, blah. So I think that's kind of the energy of the playwright more than other writers.
Sure.
And yeah, so I think with Bluebird these past couple of years, I don't know if any of us really expected this when we started the company, but we have kind of become a company that's more based in, like, trying to write new things, like with Bluebird Broadcast and with our virtual one acts. And then my play, and even a little bit, like when we did Trojan Women, the recording of it, that was kind of like creating a whole new thing because first of all, I cut a lot of it. And then you edited it together and made it into something that play has never been, you know? So I think that's a lot of... So with this, with A Little Less Than Kind... I think that was slightly autobiographical, but I'll tell a little bit about A Little Less Than Kind and how I thought of it. I really like Shakespeare now. I didn't used to love Shakespeare when I was growing up, or I would always see it, but I sort of was confused by it, like, as a playwright, because in Shakespeare, like, everyone says exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they're going to do.
Not quite the same as our day and age.
Exactly. So in plays... In Chekhov, like, they never say what they're thinking and they never say what they're going to do. But for some reason, they talk for a long, long time. So with Shakespeare, I went to, like, a summer abroad program in London at London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, Lambda, but it was just studying Shakespeare. I ended up there by accident in a weird way. Like, not exactly by accident, I applied.
The universe brought you there.
Yeah.
For a reason.
But I didn't realize exactly what I was in for. Like, I didn't realize it was going to be, like, 8:30 to 5:30 acting classes every day. I kind of thought I was going to be doing, like, studying academically Shakespeare, and it's like, oh, no, like, really get on your feet.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was a great experience, and I think through acting Shakespeare, I was like, oh, okay, now I love this. And I remember that summer, I had never read Hamlet, and I saw it for the first time. And, you know, being a theater person and being, like, 19 or 20 and never having read Hamlet is, like, not very common. A lot of people read it by then. But we didn't read it in my high school, and seeing it for the first time, like, it's just you never know what's going to happen. Like, it's such a good play. And, like, so many, you know, I heard some people being like, oh, well, this part of the production I didn't understand, or blah, blah, blah. And I was like, or they didn't like, they were, you know, quibbling with it. And I was just there, like, eyes wide, like, that's what Hamlet is? Like, it's so good. And then I think...
see it to believe it, huh?
Exactly, yeah. And you know, that's such a silly way of saying that, like, theater should be experienced, you know what I mean? Especially with Shakespeare. I think that's why a lot of people don't really love it because they just like read it in high school and they have to like look up what a bunch of words mean and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think true Shakespeare understanding comes from not being studious about it and really, you know, living the story. And there's no really other way to do that unless you're in the audience and living and breathing it through the actors.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a nice roundabout to a memory I have of us on stage playing in As You Like It, directed by Max Rosenak.
Oh my God.
What was it, 2019 by this point? Where we were lovers.
Oh my God, that was so much fun. Yeah. Well, because we were Phoebe and Sylvius. You were Phoebe, I was Sylvius, right?
Yeah.
And what people can't see right now is that I'm like 5 inches shorter than you, I think.
Right. You know, that's being generous too. I think. So there's this Phoebe just towering over, and I think it kind of played really nicely into the character development as well, where
exactly.
Well, because you know, added this whole other dimension.
Yeah, right. Because it wasn't, you know, I think with Shakespeare, like I take a strong stance that like gender never matters in Shakespeare because like men were playing women all the time, and technically women were not legally allowed to be on stage while Shakespeare was writing, but that like people act like that doesn't mean women broke the law. Like I don't know. There's some historical recordings of like, you know, women breaking the law or whatever, and it maybe they weren't on stage at the Globe, but his plays were like they were circulated, like people anyway.
Sure.
But what was so fun about that, I think, is that we had this kind of like modern spin on it where you were like this like really intense girl who's like, I want what I want when I want it, you know. and I was,
she's girl bossing her way through that.
And then I was just like this sort of like little beta emo boy being like, I'll do whatever you want, can you just love me?
True. It worked out for them in the end, kind of.
Yeah, I mean they end up together, like that's one. I think also
for better or for worse.
Yeah, because that's what's so funny about Shakespeare, right? Is that you're like the comedies, like insane things happen, and in our like modern conception of psychology, it like doesn't make sense. But it's like he was writing the play, and he's like, well, it's a comedy, so everyone gets married at the end.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
So how about we bring it back to A Little Less Than Kind then? Since we're talking about characters and playing them, you play Hannah. So do you feel like maybe you relate to most to Hannah out of all of the protagonists maybe you've written about in the past?
Yeah. So A Little Less Than Kind, it's a modern gender bend adaptation of Hamlet set in... Oh, hella, you're right, Effie.
Do you agree?
Hamlet, the Hamlet character is named Hannah and is like 22-year-old bisexual girl who comes from a very, very rich Silicon Valley family that owns like a tech company, and all the other characters are there, sometimes gender bent, sometimes not. Ophelia's family is all the same gender because I wanted Ophelia to still be a woman, and but then everything else is switched, so Claudia is Claudius. And so with Hannah, it was definitely like I was writing it thinking of myself in mind. So she shares a lot of characteristics with me, although so I'm an identical twin. There are some lines that Hannah says that are lifted exactly from things my twin has said, actually. Because my twin, when she's a lot more combative in conversations than I want to be, like she doesn't really and that's kind of what I admire about her. She doesn't let anything like go by. Like if someone says something she disagrees with, it doesn't, she doesn't let it slide. Like she's not gonna, if someone has an opinion she doesn't think they should have, they are going to hear about it.
And rightfully so, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. And she doesn't really care about saying things to people to like make them comfortable. Like she doesn't want to, and maybe and by the way, this isn't like how my sister is. Like she stands up for her beliefs and stuff, but she doesn't like want to like hurt people. So I think Hannah kind of,
not at the expense of.
Yeah. So I think Hannah has this, that she that she believes that she's like fighting for justice. And I'm like, well, I think you're just kind of like arguing with your family at the dinner table.
Yeah, the lines get blurred eventually.
But I think what I wrote in that's a lot of me is that, I mean, I think you were in classes with me when teachers would be like, oh, Gracie, like you're overthinking and you're over intellectualizing this role and like you just need to like feel the text or blah blah blah. And with Hannah, I've kind of written this part for myself of a person who is sort of like, because that's where I've adapted most of the soliloquies, not every soliloquy that Hamlet says, but she sort of uses them to talk through her feelings and to kind of to really get to the logical, deep reason of why she's feeling the way she is, and can she maybe talk herself out of it. And she's feeling such a depth of despair that she can't, because she had this complicated relationship with her mother, and her mother's gone now, and there's kind of actually just watched this movie, Drive My Car, last night about grief and how once someone dies, there's like so much you can't there's so much you wish you could say to them but you can't say, and that you love them but you also want to like yell at them and stuff like that. And
right.
But on it, she gets this opportunity to, because her mother's ghost comes back, and she like totally, she doesn't say anything she wants to say to her mother. She just like sits there and kind of takes it, and like, and so you look at her and you're like, wow, you argue sort of with everybody else, but when your mom is talking at you, you're like, you do nothing. And I wouldn't say that's
right,
like,
and it really counts.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like, oh, that's what I relate or blah blah blah. But I think it's it is the kind of thing of like, when you're in the shower and you're like, oh man,
I was just about to say we can all relate to that, because at some point we've always just been like, oh, and if I was, and I would say this, and I would put it this way, and that, and like we all feel that. We all have things that we would have done differently, and when you get an opportunity to talk to the ghost of a parent, maybe things don't always come out the exact way that you imagine them.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think I understand what my acting teachers were always saying when they were saying that I was like over intellectualizing things, and but it always I've gotten that a lot, like, oh, you're very smart, and it always felt like kind of a dig, like, oh, you're too smart to be in touch with your body, or blah blah blah, like, I don't know.
Actually, I have no thoughts.
Yeah.
Head empty.
And I'm just like, yeah. So it's such a strange note that I've gotten, because I'm like, I don't know what to do about this.
You're not going to stop. Yeah, you're not going to stop thinking about it. And if anything, it's the most genuine part of yourself that you're putting into the character.
Exactly. So that's and so bringing it back to Atlantic, when they said make your own work, I think after I wrote this play, I sort of saw what they were talking about, which is you can. I feel like I've written a part for myself that is very easy for me to act. That instead of like fighting against parts of myself, I get to more embrace them, and
it fits you so well.
Oh, thank you.
She does.
Yes, and she's kind of fun to live in, because she's like, she's dramatic and she doesn't back down against things, and and she also, I think she also thinks she's smarter than she is. Like, she definitely has that. She does have this sense that I have, if I'm like politically left-leaning, like have so many ideas about so many problems facing our society, and then it's like, but then you look at her and you're like, okay, but like, you are just like this, rich girl, like going to college, and then you're immediately gonna have a job at your parents' giant company and like be a multimillionaire or whatever. Like, it's but it's also this I feel like a lot of art these days, I feel like, has this sense of like everyone's like fighting and we're all going through our like human emotions or whatever, and then you're reminded that like, oh, there climate catastrophe going on or whatever, like,
or World War III, you know,
or World War III,
just the usual.
Yeah, and and that it's kind of this weird thing of like, things don't stop just because, you know, there's like a crazy world event going on. Like the same thing happened to us. We didn't stop our theater company. Like I didn't stop wanting to connect, and
if anything, we became even stronger. And if this wasn't, some people are unaware who are listening, Gracie and I are several thousands of miles apart. I'm recording from the south of France, and you're in Brooklyn, right? If I'm not mistaken. And as is for the rest of the company, you know, we're all over the place. And yeah, if anything, it brought us even closer together and even clearer in our goals, which I think is really special. However, you know, that doesn't, I mean, it's a black hole to get into of, like, you know, world events and etc. But then you have to keep on circling back. Yeah,
because it presents different challenges, and I think so to talk about like the virtual stage reading of A Little Less Than Kind. So we hired this incredible director, Jessica Wu, which we found through like an open call on Playbill, which but she, you know, we interviewed some, and she was like, the way that she saw the play was so like how I saw it, you know, like, cause I'm also a director, but I really thought I probably shouldn't direct my own work. I shouldn't pull the playwright, directing, and acting triple duty,
triple threat.
Yeah.
Which you very might as well could have, but I think it was a very brave choice, and you know, to relinquish that control, at least in that aspect of the play.
Yeah.
Giving it so many more opportunities.
Yeah, and I also wanted to make clear to her, like, and make clear to the actors, like, and this was great up in the rehearsal room. Yes, I'm here, and I'm the writer, and maybe I have ideas, but you don't have to worry. You don't have to, like, ask me about them. Like, it's your thing. But my favorite, because I wrote this, it was about 1.5 years from me finishing it to us, like, getting a virtual staged reading of it. And Jessica and I, like, sat down together, went through the script line by line, which was excruciating. Really edited it and clarified characters' intentions. And then once we started rehearsing for the virtual staged reading, she had so many ideas and thoughts about the characters and, like, what they wanted. And it was so wild to, like, watch them be directed with her, like, guiding them. And there was this one moment in rehearsal where there's a scene at the end of the play, which is a riff on the Gravediggers, but it's the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern character, and they're playing mourners, and they're sitting Shiva. Yeah. And then Jessica, we do the scene once, and Jessica goes, "Gracie, can I take you in a breakout room for a second?" And I was like, "Okay." And then, so she takes me.
Where's this going?
She takes me to a breakout room. She says, "I think the mourners should be like 2 yentas, like from Fiddler on the Roof." Is that like what you meant when you wrote it? And is that like really, really offensive? Because I'm Jewish. So she like wanted to check in with me about it. And I was like, that is the funniest thing I have ever heard. Let's do that immediately. And now I'm going to write it in the script so they do it in every single production.
Amazing.
Because I hadn't even thought of that, you know? I was just kind of trying to write this riff on the Gravediggers, and then she, like, made it so good. And, you know, we're trying to, before we can get it fully staged, we're trying to do a reading in person, because I still haven't even, like, heard it with other bodies in the room. And I feel like that's going to blow my mind.
It's very true. I think getting Jessica into the process, and she's just been everything I bet you can imagine and want from a director. Just the ultimate shining light. So open-minded, so, you know, ready to play, really. And I think it really shows in what the play is becoming and has become. So speaking a little bit about the play itself, I love the title. I'm obsessed with it. I love abbreviating it. I love, you know, stamping the little logo everywhere with the title. I love it. Did you know what you were going to call it before you started writing? Or, because I know it's a little hint. So tell us about the title. Did you know it before you started writing? Did it sort of spring onto you one day like a great idea?
I called it Hamlet Adaptation for maybe a year. because I don't like giving titles to things.
Straight to the point.
Yeah. I don't like giving titles to things. So I think I gave it a title when I, like, sent it to a competition and it just needed a title.
Fair enough.
But I think at one point it was the whole line, because, it's literally Hamlet's very first line in the original Shakespeare play, where, like, Claudius is talking about how great it is that he and Gertrude are married now, and he's the king, and, you know, there's not the hand off the wheel, and Denmark's gonna thrive, and, Hamlet just says, a little more than kin, a little less than kind. Like, that's his first line of the play.
Yeah.
And it's an aside, like, people might hear it. You could play it either way in a production of it, but it just means that, like, their family dynamic has, like, shifted. It's kind of creepy what's happened. Mm-hmm. And it's not, like, very nice. You know, I am. If a Shakespeare scholar is listening to this and is horrified by how I just explained that line, I'm sorry. But, I think but it's so biting, you know? And so I feel like that, like, biting sensibility is a lot of what this play is taking. Because I haven't adapted all of Hamlet, because there's a lot going on in Hamlet. Like, there's like a political
There's a lot to dissect there.
Yeah. And there's political stuff. Hamlet does get captured by pirates at one point, but it happens off stage.
Okay.
And, like, you can miss that. I missed it. I think even sometimes they cut the line out because it, like, doesn't really matter. But and so, yeah, I think with the title, I just wanted to set you up for, like, what you're about to watch. And I think, you know, again, like, picking titles, not my strong suit, but I like to go with phrases that are a little descriptive, and I think this one, a lot of people, unless they're, like, true heads, don't really know that it's a Hamlet quote. Like, actually, my dad called me after he watched it, and I was like, oh, I forgot. Like, is that a Hamlet quote? And I was like, yeah. It is.
Yeah, and that's a little satisfying, you know, little Easter egg for those that do catch it.
Yeah, because I feel like because it is a very straight adaptation. Like I said, when I was writing it, I had my, you know, Norton edition of Hamlet open on my lap, and I was going through the scenes and writing. So I think that, like, you know, I've gotten a bit of feedback from people saying, like, oh, you could stray from Hamlet a little bit more. And I'm like, I could, but I don't think that's what this play is doing, you know? I'm straying from it where I need to, you know? But I think, another thing people told me is that in the play, it kind of seems like, because Ophelia doesn't die and the Polonius character doesn't die, that it kind of seems like I'm not building to everyone else dying, but then everyone else does die. Like, that's it.
Don't worry, we've got it covered.
Yeah.
So they'll get there eventually.
I remember when I was first writing it, I was like, am I going to do the fencing battle? I mean, like, no one really does fencing battles these days. Like, that's not really how we work out emotions.
I mean, I'd be down for it. If anybody asked me to handle things that way, let's go.
Like, I'd much rather handle problems that way, like disputes at work. Like, all right, let's get the foils out.
Who never heard of her. Let's battle it out.
But I also feel like there's kind of this weird thing where, like, to, like, justify the fact that we're ending this with a fencing battle, the rest of the play has to have a lot more Hamlet jokes than I think people might want, but it kind of justifies itself by being like, oh, and now we're doing the fencing battle. Like, that's my justification against this is too much like Hamlet, but, you know, the play can still change. We'll see. Like, I have changed a lot of Ophelia's story, and because, like, Ophelia especially she's like the most fridged female character, like, of all time.
Yeah.
And there's not really, like, a kind, like, a really, like, feminist way to read her, you know what I mean? Because she, like...
No. Yeah, I see it.
She, like, does what her dad says, and then she goes crazy because Hamlet's crazy, you know? I think I did see it was like Sam Gold's production where Oscar Isaac played Hamlet, and the Ophelia in that one was kind of like, she was kind of mean and she was kind of butch, but you got the sense that she was just holding back a lot of what she really thought.
All right.
And I kind of liked that, but it's like, but like you need this like really cool actress to like bring that to life, whereas like most of the time Ophelia is just like crying and screeching all over the stage.
Right.
Like I did see another one where I was like, it was such an inventive production, and then like, oh, Ophelia comes out in a nightgown. Okay.
There it is.
But it's not even his fault. There's not a lot of ways to do it. So I wanted to give her a little bit more life, but I think I'm still not even quite done with that storyline yet of tweaking it.
So speaking of how, you know, people said too much Hamlet-esque and not enough Hamlet-esque and all that jazz, how do you handle that sort of literary criticism?
Right. Yeah.
Because in this case, it's like, I know where it's going. This is the way I feel it in my heart for it to go.
Yeah.
And so this is what's going to happen.
It's hard because when we were at Atlantic, like we just sort of had to, we had to like do everything our teachers said, you know?
We were all little Ophelias running around.
Yes, exactly. That is such a good way of putting it. We were all little Ophelias, even the boys. Like we were all little Ophelias because we were all crying all the time.
Yeah,
yeah. And that's part of acting training, you know. Yeah. So like, because you can't see yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So like, you do have to listen to what other people are saying. Mm-hmm. And if you're really in the zone, like you come out of it and you're like, I don't know what happened. Like
I blacked out. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And that means that you probably had a pretty good performance. I mean, one time when we were performing As You Like It, we like come off stage and I'm like, she threw her shoe at me. I'm holding her shoe.
I did throw my shoe at you. Listen,
and I was like, like the spirit moved you, I guess.
It moved my hand to take my shoe off and throw it across the stage.
Yeah, and I was just like holding it, and I was like.
Then I remember the way you played it off. It was really like a gift, honestly.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, because I was like, oh, great shoe. And we got some laughs, so there you go. But
yeah.
So that's the whole point to say. Like, I think I was in this. It was hard to get out of this mode of like, oh, I need to listen to like what everyone else is telling me. And there's definitely like some criticism that is very important, and you do need to, okay, I'll put it this way. You need to listen to all criticism. You need to know when someone is maybe just telling you, well, this is the play I would write, and you didn't write the play I would write, which I think is a little more common than we think it is, because I come to that with some plays I see. Like, I'm like, oh, well, I would have done this. And it's like, well, you didn't write it. You know? Like,
then do it. I don't know what to tell you. Do it.
Exactly. And something I have learned is, there was one... We did like a private Bluebird reading of it, and there was someone who said like, enough with like the modern references, we get it, like they're millennials or whatever. And I was like, oh, I wonder why that's the criticism I got. Okay, maybe it's because the modern references aren't doing it, like in some moments they're like not actually doing what I think they're doing.
Sure.
And so I went through and I took out a couple, but like I didn't take them all out, and tried to like make them more seamless. You know what I mean? Because like that is the way like well, also like technically they're Gen Z, so even I feel like ancient when I'm trying to write about like 21-year-olds or whatever. But a lot of them do talk like that, like, you know, bringing up random political things all the time, or like making jokes, saying memes out loud. Like that's how we talk now. But I think there is this interesting thing of, like, we're really not, you know, I've seen it, like, with people talking about, like, Jeremy O. Harris, too, like, because he's a millennial and he's pretty young for someone to have a play on Broadway. But by the time, like, a new play premieres on Broadway, someone is usually very established in their career. Mm-hmm. And they're in, like, their 40s or 50s normally. Like, there's not many, like, 25-year-olds who have a play premiere on Broadway. So a lot of theater audiences, like, aren't used to, like, young people actually writing young people. Mm. Like, they're kind of only used to, like in Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike by Christopher Durang, when he writes the young gay guy as, like, just this phone-obsessed weirdo or something like that. And I'm like, okay, but, like, you're clearly 60 writing, like, your perception of a 25-year-old, which there's not, obviously there's a place for that, but, like, there's not many young people, like, actually writing young people. And, like, I'm getting older, so I'm also, like, I try to read plays by other young people to, like, you know, figure out how people are talking now. So that was a criticism where I had to understand, like, what the words were doing. And then, that's the other thing. No one's seen it yet. Like, maybe they've seen a virtual staged reading or whatever, but sometimes, like, reading a play, like, you have no idea really what's going on.
No, it doesn't
like,
have the life in it that you really, you know, dropped into it through your writing.
Because reading a play is like a architect's sketch of a house or something. Like, it's not ready.
And that's maybe why, you know, very clearly why so many people reading Shakespeare nowadays, you know, don't get it or, you know, can't, you know, materialize it in their mind, because quite literally it's not meant to be read.
Exactly. I mean, even because he never even wrote the plays to be one document. Like, he wrote, as we learned in our Shakespeare class, he just wrote, like, cue scripts, and people would just have their own lines and their cue line, and they didn't even read the whole play. So, like, if you have, like, a small part in Hamlet, you don't know what happened. So you're sitting backstage at the Globe, like, what? They all died? Like, and then also, like, imagine, like, you're Ophelia and you're, like, waiting for the Hamlet actor, and you're waiting for your cue line, and he's doing, like, to be or not to be, and you're just sitting there like, man, is this that guy ever gonna shut up? Like, what?
Really kind of just becomes this improv exercise.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, like, their brains worked in, like, an insane way back then.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I bet they would say the same about us.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think there's when you're taking criticism for a play that you've written, just remember that the person giving you the criticism maybe is not thinking of, like, the actor's way that they're gonna do it, or this or this or this, and that you should get most of the feedback once you, like, hear the play out loud.
Sure. And so Hannah was, you know, you had yourself in mind for that role, which made it so personal and true to heart. How about the other characters? Were any of those written with any specific people in mind? Or were they sort of full characters of life in and of themselves, and then to find the right actor?
Yeah. I think a couple of them are, like, sort of based on people I know, but not in exactly a one-to-one way. Mm-hmm. And the Rosencrantz and, like, Guildenstern characters, Rosa and Gilda, like, they were a little more based on, like, collections of, you know, people I knew in college who were just, like, who just seemed to be at everything that I was going to, and I was like, you guys again! But in a sort of loving way. I think it was definitely, like, because I knew I'd read it with Bluebird, there were certainly people I thought of for roles, and so when I was writing Harry, the Horatio character, I definitely thought of Daniel Sbriglio, because he, you know, he was a gay guy in our year, and he was very funny and very smart, and we'd done a few scenes together, so we, like, have a lot of acting chemistry built up, and I felt like that would work. I think in the virtual reading, when another Bluebird Company member, Lachlan, read Lawrence, I was like, oh,
there it is.
Like, I didn't necessarily think of him for reading that, but I really felt like he got it, you know? And then with Rosa and Gilda, this was actually another, like, Jessica creation. It was Georgia and Amanda, who are both Bluebird Company members, and they're both very, like, strong, interesting women, you know? And I'm a silly goofball. So, like, I'm often cast as the comic relief and blah, blah, blah. and like to make jokes to, you know, fend off everything. But George and Amanda are not often cast as the comic relief because they are both, you know, they feel things very deeply and they're very beautiful and they have all this power and stuff like that. And then we cast them as Rosa and Gilda, and Jessica has them like do like Valley Girl accents, and it was so funny. And I was so like, good. Oh my God, this is even more perfect than I thought it would be. I'm almost like jealous of them because those are like they're getting all the laughs. Like they are the funniest part.
Right, how the tables have turned.
Exactly. But it's so fun to especially like be in Bluebird and like watch people change and grow into maybe different roles that I wasn't expecting them to do really well. Mm-hmm. And our resident playing the mom character, Rory, played Claudia and Helen, and she was so great because, like, again, she's like, I have this real life relationship with her where I like respect her so much because I think she's so cool because she's like older than me and like, you know, doing acting and stuff, and then we get to like play with that dynamic like in the play, you know. And so that's why it's hard to find when because we're young and we're still like doing, you know, lower budget theater. It's hard to find actors that are different ages. But I think another reading I did from it with it, my director friend was like, oh yeah, like it's really important that there's a generational difference in this play, that like part of why they are having so much trouble, Hannah's having so much trouble communicating with her parents and stuff, is because they're of a different generation and they don't really understand what she's going through. So I think that's definitely it's such a blessing to like write a play and know that you have a group of people that are gonna bring it to life for you.
Yeah, we are really lucky with our differences in our ensemble, how we have this plethora of people to choose from. We're all so different and yet so similar, and we know each other so well, you know. And then at the same time, just like, you know, Amanda Stem and Georgia Gabriel surprise you. Like, we know them so well, and then you put them into this role, and then you see just, like, a whole different aspect of these people and the characters that they play. I think it's so awesome. We're so lucky, and yeah, it's really so awesome to see these people just like flourish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how about, in case we have any aspiring writers listening, is there anything to do with the playwright's process or challenge, or, you know, even writer's block as it may be? Is there anything that you can sort of throw out there that has helped you throughout the process of writing A Little Less Than Kind and maybe other plays as well?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it really helps to write a play when you know who you're writing it for. Like, I remember when we did one of our Nights of One Acts, I wrote specifically for a couple of Bluebird company members that I knew were going to be really fun with this. And and I knew, like, what I wanted them to say and what I wanted things to sound like. But for writing other plays, you have a story inside you that is different to anyone else's story, right? So what was very helpful about writing this play was I didn't have to, like, make up the plot because I just decided to do the plot of Hamlet. Like, I didn't have to think of, like, oh, is it realistic if they do this? It's like, no, because I just did Hamlet. There's
it's already tried and true, which is very helpful.
Yeah. There aren't that many different stories to tell, but that doesn't, like, different, like, plots, but that doesn't mean that yours won't be really great because it's you, it's individual. So I think just remember that, like, don't be too worried if, like, this has been done before, because it hasn't been done by you.
Totally.
Writer's block, I think, I did, a mentor of mine, Asai Dean, who's the director in Portland, and she's amazing, and I assistant directed her when she directed Hamlet. She told me that she read a quote from Jose Rivera that said, your writer's block is trying to tell you something, so listen to it. Oh. And it's from his, like, list of playwriting tips. And I thought that was really beautiful, and maybe it's just an excuse to, like, not write. But
I'll take it.
Yeah, but it's something my mom also says is there are scenes in your pieces that are going to be like when you're making potato salad and you've boiled the potatoes and you need to peel them right away and they're really hot, but you have to peel them because you have to, like, get everything together when they're hot, and you don't want to hold them, but you just have to keep doing it. And I think it's just, like, kind of a funny metaphor, because she's right. There are things that are just like, oh God, it hurts.
Such a mom thing to say. Bless her.
Right. Yeah. And I think something about playwriting is like, there definitely were a few scenes where I was like, I hate this. Yeah. And then I realized that I could write insert joke about whatever here.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to finish it. And then, like, if you're reading it out loud.
It's not linear, yeah.
Yeah. But then, of course, like, you're reading it out loud and some actor will go, insert joke about Paul here. And you're like, that's not the actual line. I'll come up with a line. But it's so funny because they try to sell it. They're like, insert joke about Paul here? Or whatever. Like, they're trying so hard. And I'm just like, don't worry. So maybe try to get those out of the way before you present it to an actor. But,
right.
They will try.
Otherwise, they might just change your mind and be like, oh, you know what? That actually really works.
Exactly. So sometimes you write a line and you're like, God, that fucking sucks. And then an actor says it and you're like, oh, that's actually good.
Yeah.
So I think there are some scenes where it's like, if you're ever like, I literally don't know what to do with this scene, you just hear it out loud and you don't have to wait for a full reading. You could call a couple friends and be like, can you guys just read this with me? Or just even one friend, you can go back and forth. I think for playwrights, like, just be curious about the world and be curious about how people talk and how people go through things. Like, I've always been curious. Some might say nosy. And I do steal things from real life and hope that, people won't be offended if they see it. But, like, my sister saw the lines I stole from her and she thought it was funny. So
that's awesome.
I think she was like a little bit like, she was like, give me credit for those.
She can't say anything, you're twins.
Yeah, exactly.
What's mine is yours.
Like, we share genetics,
right?
So that's technically mine.
It could have come out of my mouth with as much likeliness as yours.
Exactly.
I don't have a twin, but that's what I imagine it would be.
That's exactly what it's like. And also, like, there's not too many plays. There should be more plays. Keep writing plays. We love them.
Totally. A change of scenery, a change of mentality will always help, I can imagine.
Yes. So, like, also, like, if you're feeling like, oh, I'm never writing again, just take a walk and drink a glass of water. Then you'll be fine.
Yeah, just, take a nap.
Yeah. Like, chances are you haven't had that much water that day. So.
True. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so how about to close it off, I'll ask you a question that has absolutely nothing to do with playwriting, acting, or whatever it is. Just a fun little tidbit for you. It's kind of cheesy, but if you had a time machine, Gracie, what period of time and what place would you travel to?
Oh. Yeah, like, sorry to be basic, but, like, and it's lame, but I would definitely go to Woodstock.
Oh my God,
in 1969. Yes. Like, that's
yes.
Can you believe what that, like, I see videos from it and I'm like, I can't even believe this.
Oh God. I went through a total phase of, like, not even a phase, it's still going, but 5 years where I would just exclusively listen to the Grateful Dead nonstop.
I want to see Jimi Hendrix and, like, Creedence Clearwater Revival and, like, days. And just see all those hippies, like, tripping out on this farm.
Yeah, what a time. Do you think they were reading Hamlet somewhere in those tents?
I feel like they must have been. Yeah.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I would be definitely impressed.
Yeah.
But
like tripping on acid, like reading it out loud or something.
That would be a show I would pay to see.
Yeah. I would do a one-woman performance of Hamlet at Woodstock and like alter the timeline or
Amazing.
Something.
Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty substantial for time, I'd say. Yeah. How much more of our voices can we listen to? So... if you love listening to Gracie and want to know everything about her, go to gracierittenberg.com. Also go to bluebirdtheater.org if you want to know more about our theater. And there's a little page on A Little Less Than Kind if you want to learn more about that and potentially, donate via the field, because we would love to put on this amazing show, and everything you've heard about it is just a little slice of just how amazing it is. Make sure to follow us on our social media everywhere. We're everywhere. You can literally find us everywhere. And you can find Bluebird Broadcast everywhere and listen to us anywhere you find your podcasts. Make sure to tune in next time, whether it's a Bluebird Broadcast Tell Me About It or audio theater experience. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for coming on, Gracie. Really appreciate it. I had a great time talking to you.
Thanks for having me, Milena. I always love talking to you, too.
And we don't have a formal way of closing these off yet, but for the time being, thanks for telling me about it. Cheesy.
Perfect.
All right. And outro music.